What if the person you mocked today turned out to be the one holding your future in their hands? In Miami, one morning delivery would expose arrogance, test character, and reveal a truth that every one of us needs to hear. Respect costs nothing, but its absence can cost you everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Miami as Cole Thompson pulled his delivery truck into the back alley of Celestine's Elite Dining, one of the city's most prestigious restaurants. Cole, a quiet and dignified delivery driver, had seen his share of exclusive establishments, but Celestine's carried an air of pretension that was almost tangible even in its loading area. The restaurant's imposing silver doors marked staff only seemed to challenge anyone who didn't belong to dare enter. Cole methodically loaded his dolly with boxes of organic produce and specialty seafood, preparing for what would become one of the most revealing mornings of his career. As he approached the entrance, the sound of mocking laughter drifted from within, the kind that made one's chest tighten with its mixture of ridicule and superiority. When Cole knocked on the steel door, it opened to reveal a young chef in a crisp white jacket who regarded him as nothing more than an inconvenience. Behind the chef, other staff members peered out, one barely containing laughter while another rolled her eyes dismissively. "Deliveries are supposed to come earlier," the young chef snapped with obvious annoyance. Cole calmly presented his invoice, explaining that he was precisely on schedule with the requested fresh seafood and organic greens. The chef waved him off impatiently, instructing him to bring everything in without blocking the kitchen entrance. As Cole wheeled his dolly inside, he was immediately struck by the restaurant's opulent interior. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors so polished they served as mirrors. The open kitchen gleamed with pristine stainless steel appliances, and every corner screamed wealth and exclusivity. Yet beneath this pristine surface lay something far less polished, a culture of hierarchy and self-importance that made Cole deeply uncomfortable. The staff moved with an air of superiority that had nothing to do with pride in their work and everything to do with their perceived position in the social order. At this moment, Cole found himself at the very bottom of that hierarchy. A sharp-suited woman with a clipboard backed orders without even looking up, warning Cole not to block the chef's station. Nearby, two waiters folded napkins while whispering and snickering, making no effort to hide their amusement at his presence. "What do you think? 5 minutes before he messes something up," one waiter said loud enough for Cole to hear. The comments continued as Cole worked diligently to unload the first batch of boxes. Staff members criticized his attire, suggesting that someone delivering to such an upscale establishment should dress better. They speculated about his financial situation, with one-line cook loudly whispering that Cole probably couldn't even afford to eat at the restaurant, let alone enter through the front door. Despite years of experience dealing with such treatment, Cole felt his patience being tested. He maintained his composure, focusing on completing his delivery professionally while the mocking laughter grew louder around him. When Cole returned with the second load, he encountered Damien, the head chef, a sharp-featured man who inspected the delivered ingredients with obvious disdain. Damien questioned the quality of the seafood just loud enough for Cole to hear, then cut off his professional offer to contact the supplier with a dismissive wave. "Just drop it off and leave. We've got more important things to focus on," Damien declared. The head chef then began a loud performance for his staff, lamenting the dropping standards everywhere and questioning whether delivery drivers were taught professionalism anymore. His words were clearly intended for Cole to hear, designed to establish Damien's authority while diminishing Cole's dignity. The harassment escalated when a kitchen staff member played a cruel joke, calling Cole over to pick up what turned out to be an empty box, then laughing at his expense. "Just messing with you, man. Relax a little," the staff member said, slapping his knee in amusement. When Cole finally completed the delivery and handed the signed invoice to Damien, the head chef didn't bother with eye contact or basic courtesy. "You can go now," he said curtly, offering no thanks for the service. As Cole reached the door, one waiter muttered under his breath, "Yeah, go back to wherever you came from." This final insult stopped Cole in his tracks. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Cole turned slowly, his gaze meeting the waiters with calm confidence that immediately silenced the smirks and whispers throughout the kitchen. "I came here," Cole said steadily, "to deliver something you clearly need more of, respect." The room remained quiet as Cole walked out, but the real revelation was yet to come. Outside by his truck, Cole reflected on the morning's events. What the staff didn't know was that just 3 weeks earlier, he had signed the final papers making him the new owner of Celestine's Elite Dining. This purchase was the latest addition to his growing empire of fine dining establishments. Cole's journey to this moment hadn't been one of privilege. Growing up in a small Louisiana town where opportunities were scarce, he had learned the value of hard work from parents who worked tirelessly to provide for their family. At 16, he started as a dishwasher in a local diner, watching cooks and servers with fascination while dreaming of creating something extraordinary. Through years of dedication, Cole climbed from kitchen staff to manager, eventually saving enough to open his first restaurant. His vision continued growing, and when the opportunity to purchase Celestine's arose, he seized it despite the risks involved. Cole still sitting in his delivery truck in that Miami alley, watching the clock tick toward 3 o'clock. Can you imagine what was going through his mind? Here's a man who had just been humiliated, mocked, and treated like he was less than human by people who were about to discover they'd made the biggest mistake of their careers. But Cole wasn't thinking about revenge. That's not who he was. Instead, he was thinking about transformation, about the kind of leader he wanted to be and the kind of workplace he wanted to create. You see, Cole had a vision for Celestine's elite dining that went way beyond fancy chandeliers and expensive wine. He wanted to build a place where everyone, and I mean everyone, felt valued. From the guests spending hundreds of dollars on dinner to the person delivering ingredients at 7 in the morning. He believed that respect wasn't something you earned based on your job title or your bank account. Respect was something every human being deserved simply because they were human. As he sat there in the heat of that Miami afternoon, Cole made some notes on his tablet. Not angry notes about firing people or getting revenge. No, these were thoughtful notes about building a better culture, about creating standards that would make Celestine's not just successful, but meaningful. Meanwhile, inside that gleaming restaurant, the staff was going about their day completely clueless about what was coming. Damien was prep cooking for the evening service, probably still chuckling about his performance that morning. The waiters were setting up tables, maybe sharing the story of the delivery guy who got all upset about a little joke. None of them had any idea that their entire world was about to flip upside down. At 2:45, Greg, the restaurant manager, started gathering everyone in the main dining room. He was nervous. You could see it in the way he kept checking his watch and adjusting his tie. All he'd been told was that the new owner would be arriving for an important meeting, and it was mandatory for everyone to attend. "All right, everyone," Greg called out, his voice a little too loud, a little too forced. "New owner meeting in the dining room. Drop what you're doing and get in there." The staff started filing in, and let me tell you, they were not happy about it. Damien strutted in with his arms crossed, looking like this whole thing was beneath him. "What's this about?" he muttered to one of the servers. "We're slammed tonight, and now we have to sit through some corporate speech." The servers rolled their eyes and found seats, probably expecting some boring presentation about profit margins and customer satisfaction scores. The kitchen staff shuffled in last, still wiping their hands on their aprons, clearly annoyed about being pulled away from their prep work. If you could have seen the energy in that room, it was like a classroom full of teenagers being forced to attend an assembly they didn't want to be at. Nobody was taking this seriously. They were all just waiting for it to be over so they could get back to their important work. Greg stood by the entrance, checking his watch every 30 seconds. 2:58, 2:59, 3 o'clock. And then those dining room doors opened. Picture this scene for a moment. There's Damien, leaning against a table like he owns the place, tapping his foot impatiently. There are the waiters, whispering to each other about how this better be quick because they have tables to set up. There's the kitchen staff, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else in the world. And then the doors open, and in walks Cole, still wearing that same delivery uniform they'd all been making fun of just hours earlier. The room went dead silent. Not the kind of silence where people are being respectful, the kind where everyone's brain just stops working. You could see the confusion spreading across their faces like a wave. Heads turning to look at each other, eyebrows raising, mouths starting to open with unspoken questions. Damien was the first to break the silence, and of course, he did it in the worst possible way. He let out this short, sharp laugh, the kind that says this has got to be a joke, and shook his head. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. But Cole walked to the center of that dining room like he owned the place. Which, of course, he did. His composure hadn't changed one bit from that morning. Still calm, still dignified, still radiating that quiet strength that should have been a clue to anyone paying attention. He let the silence hang in the air for what felt like forever but was probably only about 30 seconds. Long enough for everyone to really look at him, to start wondering why this delivery driver was standing in the middle of their mandatory staff meeting. Greg was the one who finally broke. You could see the confusion all over his face as he stepped forward. Cole, he said, his voice cracking just a little. What are you doing here? This meeting is for staff only. And that's when Cole smiled. Just a small smile, but it carried the weight of everything that was about to happen. I know, Greg, Cole said, his voice as steady as it had been that morning. That's why I'm here. Now you could see the gears turning in everyone's heads. But they still didn't get it. They were still thinking this was some kind of mistake, some kind of confusion that would get sorted out in a minute. Damien rolled his eyes, and decided to take charge of the situation. Look, he said with that same dismissive tone he'd used that morning, if this is about the delivery earlier, can we just move on? We have actual work to do. Oh, if he only knew what was coming. Cole turned his attention directly to Damien, and something in his gaze made the head chef's smug expression start to fade. It was like watching someone slowly realize they'd made a terrible mistake, but they weren't quite sure what that mistake was yet. You're right, Chef Damien, Cole said, his voice still calm but carrying just a hint of steel now. This is about the delivery. And it's about a lot more than that. He paused, letting that sink in before delivering the words that would change everything. Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Cole Thompson, and as of 3 weeks ago, I'm the new owner of Celestine's Elite Dining. Have you ever seen a room full of people realize they've just stepped in it? Big time. That's what happened in that moment. The silence was so complete you could have heard someone's heart stop beating. And maybe someone's did. Damien's face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, horror, and finally, that sick realization that hits you when you know you've messed up beyond all repair. The servers were staring at Cole like he'd just announced he was from another planet. The kitchen staff looked like they wanted to disappear into the marble floor. And poor Greg looked like he was about to have a heart attack. You, Damien finally managed to croak out, his voice barely a whisper. You're the owner. That's right, Cole confirmed, his tone never changing from that perfectly controlled calm. And then came the lesson that none of them would ever forget. You know what I love about Cole? Even in this moment when he could have absolutely destroyed these people who had treated him so poorly, he chose education over humiliation. He chose to build rather than tear down. Before anyone says anything else, Cole continued, his voice carrying through that silent dining room like it was a church sermon, I want you to understand something. This isn't about me flaunting my title or putting anyone in their place. This is about respect. He let that word hang in the air for a moment. Respect. The same word he used that morning when he walked out. I spent this morning observing how this team operates, he continued. I saw the way you treated me because you assumed I was just a delivery driver. And I want you to think about what that says, not about me, but about you. You could see it happening, that uncomfortable shift as people started to really remember what they'd done. The jokes, the eye rolls, the dismissive comments, that cruel prank with the empty box. Damien was staring at the floor now, probably reliving every single moment of his performance that morning. The servers were looking anywhere but at Cole. Even the kitchen staff who thought they were just innocent bystanders were realizing they'd been part of the problem too. You judged me before you even knew who I was, Cole said. You made assumptions based on how I looked, what I was wearing, and the job I was doing. And that behavior, it doesn't just hurt me. It hurts this restaurant. It hurts the culture we're trying to build here. Now here's where Cole showed what real leadership looks like. Instead of just calling them out for their behavior, he helped them understand why it mattered. Every person who walks through these doors deserves respect, he said, his voice gaining strength. Whether they are a guest spending their hard-earned money, a staff member doing their job, or someone delivering the ingredients that keep this place running. That's the standard I expect from every single one of you. The room was so quiet you could practically hear people's consciences screaming at them. And that's exactly what Cole wanted, not for them to feel destroyed, but for them to feel the weight of what they'd done and understand why it could never happen again. But Cole wasn't finished. He had one more card to play, and it was the most powerful one of all. I want you to know something about my journey, he said, his voice softening just a little. I didn't start at the top. I've been where you are. I've scrubbed floors, washed dishes, carried boxes just like I did this morning. And let me tell you something, those roles are just as important as any chef or manager in this room. Without them, this place doesn't run. Can you imagine how that must have felt for them? To realize that the man they'd been treating like he was beneath them had actually walked the exact same path they were walking. That he understood their world better than they could have ever imagined. I started washing dishes when I was 16, Cole continued. Worked my way up one step at a time. Saved every penny. Made every sacrifice. Not because I was better than anyone else, but because I believed in the dignity of work, all work. The shame in that room was thick enough to cut with a knife. But it was the good kind of shame, the kind that leads to growth and change. Cole took a step back, surveying the room full of faces that would never look at another service worker the same way again. So here's what's going to happen, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned his position through decades of hard work. Starting today, we're building a new culture here. One where every role is respected, where assumptions and judgments have no place. And if anyone thinks they can't be part of that vision, then this isn't the right team for you. The message was crystal clear without being threatening. Change or leave. Simple as that. Damien finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. He trailed off, realizing there was no excuse that could possibly make this better. Cole held up a hand to stop him, and when he spoke, his words carried the wisdom of someone who had been tested by life and chosen to respond with grace. Actions speak louder than words, Chef, Cole said. If you're willing to do better, then prove it. Show me and the rest of this team that you're here to grow. That goes for everyone. And right there, in that moment, you could feel something shift in the room. It wasn't just about the power dynamic changing, though it certainly had. It was about the possibility of becoming better people. Cole took one final look around the room, his eyes meeting each person's gaze with a mixture of firmness and hope. We all have biases, he said, his voice gentle now but no less powerful. We all make mistakes. But what matters is how we move forward. And I believe this team can be better. He started to turn toward the door, but then paused, as if remembering something important. Remember, he said, looking back at them one more time, respect costs nothing. But its absence can cost you everything. With that, Cole walked out of the dining room, leaving behind a group of people who would never be the same. The silence that followed was different from all the other silences that day. This wasn't the silence of shock or confusion. This was the silence of people truly thinking, maybe for the first time in a long while, about who they were and who they wanted to be. Damien was the first to move, slowly sinking into a chair and putting his head in his hands. You could see the weight of everything hitting him, not just the embarrassment of treating his new boss so poorly, but the realization of how many other people he might have treated the same way. One of the servers, the young woman who had nodded along with Damien's performance that morning, had tears in her eyes. Not tears of self-pity, but tears of recognition. Recognition of how she'd let herself become someone she didn't like very much. The kitchen staff stood there looking at each other, probably thinking about all the delivery drivers, all the maintenance workers, all the little people they'd dismissed over the years. How many Cole Thompsons had they failed to see? And Greg, the manager, was realizing that his job had just gotten a lot more interesting. He wasn't just managing a restaurant anymore. He was helping to build a culture. For the first time in years, Celestine's elite dining felt like it might actually live up to its name. Not because of its fancy fixtures or expensive ingredients, but because of something much more valuable, the promise of treating every human being with dignity. The transformation wouldn't happen overnight, of course. Change never does. But it had begun. Right there in that dining room, with a man in a delivery uniform teaching a room full of people what real class actually looks like. And you know what the beautiful thing was? Cole didn't do it by humiliating them or threatening them or using his power to make them pay. He did it by showing them a better way, by helping them see that their behavior wasn't just wrong, it was beneath them. That's what real leadership looks like. That's what happens when someone who has been tested by life chooses to respond with wisdom instead of bitterness. As the staff slowly began to file out of that dining room, each of them carrying the weight of Cole's words, you could feel something new in the air. Hope. The hope that comes from knowing you have a chance to be better than you were yesterday. And somewhere in Miami, Cole Thompson was probably already planning how to turn that hope into reality. You know, this story isn't really about a restaurant in Miami. It's about all of us. How many times have we looked at someone and made assumptions based on their clothes, their job, their accent, or where they come from? How many times have we missed the opportunity to see the human being standing right in front of us? Cole Thompson's story reminds us that everyone, and I mean everyone, has a story we don't know. The person delivering your food might be building a business empire. The woman cleaning your office might be working 3 jobs to put her kids through college. The man fixing your car might have wisdom that could change your life if you just took the time to listen. But here's the thing, it shouldn't matter what someone's story is. We should treat people with respect and dignity, not because they might secretly be successful or important, but because they are human beings. Because respect is something every person deserves, not something they have to earn through achievements or status. Cole could have walked into that restaurant as the owner from day one, commanding respect through his title and his power. But he chose to observe first, to understand what needed to change. And when he revealed who he was, he didn't use his position to get revenge. He used it to teach, to transform, to make things better. That's the kind of leader we need more of in this world. The kind who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. The kind who sees potential instead of just problems. So here's my challenge for you. The next time you interact with someone, anyone, try to see them the way Cole would want to be seen. Not as a job title or a social class, but as a complete human being with dreams, struggles, hopes, and dignity. Try to remember that the way we treat others says everything about who we are and nothing about who they are. And remember Cole's words, respect costs nothing, but its absence can cost you everything. In your workplace, in your community, in your daily life, be the person who builds others up. Be the person who sees the humanity in everyone. Be the Cole Thompson in someone else's story. Because you never know, the person you're kind to today might just change your life tomorrow. Or better yet, your kindness today might change theirs. Thanks for taking this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, we all have the power to make the world a little more respectful, a little more kind, one interaction at a time. Until next time, keep treating people right. It matters more than you'll ever know.